We are almost exactly to the day, to the 20th anniversary of the first performance, the first public performance ever at the New York Theater Workshop 20 years ago.
I did have a bit of Jesus Christ Superstar in me, and
Right.
but not so much, you know? And so this was like talking to me, man, and it really gave me the freedom to be me. And I remember auditioning for the second go-around of Rent and saying, like, what do I have to do? I want this. What do I have to do? And Jonathan said, oh, it's easy, because you have a pop voice. Just make me cry. Do you remember? I was like, okay.
I had finished a Broadway show about 4 months earlier, and I was on unemployment. And I even considered, I said to myself, I'm going to get more money on unemployment than doing this job. And I did consider, do I take this job or do I stay on unemployment? I slept on it before I had to answer, and I said, a voice in my head that night kept saying, take the job, take the job, take the job. So I took the job, and of course it was the best thing, you know, for my career, for my life. The message, it helped me in my life at that time, and yeah, that's it, so, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I painted on a goatee because the breakdown had said late 20s, 30s, and I had a red cardigan Christmas sweater on. They said, Rodney, you dance, right? And I said, well, yeah. And so then I proceeded to take off the sweater. You know where this is going. And Tim started pounding out a beat on the piano. I started doing some hip hop and backflip and sweated. And afterwards, I believe Bernie had said,
can I talk to you in the hallway? All coming back. It's all coming back.
And you want to check your and so sure enough, just smeared off.
I heard this material and I realized almost instantly that it was bigger than me. That it was something really, really big. And it's something that's never been heard before. And all of a sudden I got really nervous as well. It was like, oh, now I really want it. God. And Tim Weil, he had so much patience, and he saw that I had something, and he says, he's like, you know what, look, I don't want to offend you, but you know, he's like, you know, why don't you think of it in this way, think of it, because I can hear your voice, and your voice has a little bit of Little Stevie Wonder in it. So why don't you approach it like Little Stevie Wonder, you know? So it became like, live in my house, I'll be your shelter, you know?
When I sat with Jonathan and Michael, Jonathan said, I just want the movement to live on stage like it's real people. And when he said that, that clicked into my head, and I couldn't let that go, because it was great to hear that coming from what I saw as commercial in my mind, even though I know that it breaks a lot of rules for musical theater. In my mind, from where I came from, the concert stage, performance art, all of that, it was commercial. I saw it as commercial. So it was great to hear that. I walked away, and one of my mentors and collaborators, Cooper Moore, a great musician, I said, you know, I'm tired and I have this offer, and I just think I should sleep. And he looked at me and he said, never say no, just say yes, you know.
Oh my God, this is so amazing. I can't believe you called me. I'm so excited. I mean, you guys have no idea. I was just sure I was gonna... Wilson!
Jesse! That's my man there.
my God, I'm gonna cry empty a little bit.
So we just want you to know that we love you, and there's a whole, everybody.
I wish I could be there. You guys sound like you're having the biggest love-in ever.
Thank you, Daphne.
You're welcome. I love you.
I love you too, baby.
We love you, Jesse.
Jim Nicola called me up because at that time they were losing their in-house casting director, Wendy, so they were looking for a freelancer. And when he called him, he said he had this project. And he said he also had this play called Quills that he was doing by Doug Wright. And literally I tried to listen to the demo tape of Rent, but I really wasn't interested in listening to the demo tape of Rent, but I read Quills, and Quills was so good. And literally I called up Jim and said, is there any way I could just cast Quills? Could you imagine? Can you imagine what an idiot that was? That's why I never say no unless you have a better reason than that. But the minute I met these guys, it was like a love fest, you know, and I don't want to monopolize the time here, but what it was like working with Jonathan and Michael and Tim Wilde, the musical director, and Jim, you know, it was a really incredibly hard task because, you know, one thing I always like to say, this room, everyone here knows what Rent is. Back then, nobody knew what Rent was. And having nothing to do with the material, just as a job, nobody wanted that job. Because doing an off-Broadway musical for, you know, under $300 by an unknown composer, even agents and managers didn't want their clients doing it. You know, they'd much rather than be in the ensemble of Les Mis.
I took Rent partially because of you. We went to college together. And I had booked this other thing uptown, and I had booked, it was the same amount of time, the exact same money. And after my agents, I recall you guys wanted me for the Seasons of Love soloist and not Joanne because I was too old. And then my agents were like, no, she needs a role because she has a role uptown and blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, I'm like, you know what? Rent is downtown and I live in Brooklyn. I think I'd rather do that than schlep to the movies.
John would share whatever he was working on with us. And part of it was I lived in California and he was in New York. So a lot of times he'd work late into the night on some songs or music or whatever it was he was working on. And it was too late to share it with his friends on the East Coast. So he would call me and I'd pick up the phone and he'd just say, listen. And he would play whatever it was he was working on.
New York Theater Workshop this is 92. And we had been working in a theater in the West Village, in a rental theater, and our generous board finally got us our own home, and we were moving to this place in the East Village, and we were talking amongst ourselves about how it might be good to actually look for some work by some writers about the new neighborhood we were going to inhabit, so that we would not just feel like invaders, that we might be having a conversation with our new neighbors. So Jonathan said, this would be a perfect theater for my new show. And George said, well, bring it over and drop it off for Jim. So he did, and we listened to it. It was a script and a cassette tape.
Do you know what those are?
Yeah. And the cassette tape, which I still have, was Jonathan on his electric piano singing the songs. And there were some good ones and some not good ones in that early version. But the good ones were remarkably good. And it was very clear from that first encounter that this was an unusual talent. And for a small theater like us, this was going to be a big challenge to take on a musical. We'd never done that before. So I liked the idea of an organization like ours actually growing because the artists that we wanted to support demanded that we grow, not just for the sake of getting bigger.
Just about exactly 20 years ago, I was in my office at Friends Indeed, and Jonathan called me, and he said, we're rehearsing at New York Theater Workshop, and I would just love it if you would come over this afternoon and talk with my cast. I put it off a little. I said, gee, well, you know, I'm really busy, and but let me see if I can, you know. And my husband, who was an actor, had died just a few months before, And I remember I sort of was pacing around thinking, how do I get out of this? I don't want to do this. And I really felt like I heard Patrick. I felt like he said to me, wait a minute. These are young actors and people excited about the theater, and and it's about AIDS, and there's only one answer, and the answer is yes. Now I didn't hear anybody sing a song. I didn't hear a note of music, but I got it. I got that there was something going on in that room that was extraordinary.
Although my brother didn't live to see the kind of success that Rent has become and what's happened with musical theater as a result, he was supremely confident of what he had, and for all the people who were doubting whether to take it, he knew exactly what he had. He wasn't sure if anyone else was going to be able to see it, but he was confident and terrified at the same time. But that last night, when you had the invited dress rehearsal, he was enormously proud of each and every one of you and of what he had done, and he felt whatever happened that he had done it.
Because he was being interviewed. He was being interviewed by the New York Times that evening.
Correct.
And we didn't say goodbye because he was in the booth.
Box office.
Right? He was in the
Yeah,
box
we walked
office.
by and waved. You're like,
we
see you
just
tomorrow.
waved, see you tomorrow.
Yeah. And it was like, good job. We'll see each other tomorrow. And tomorrow was our first dress rehearsal.
Opening night.
First preview, rather. Yeah. First preview. That was our first dress rehearsal. Yeah.
So it truly is live each moment as your last. And
Absolutely.
just, really being grateful for every moment and every second, as opposed to looking at life in a way of, I wish I... Only way to go is forward, one foot in front of the other, and just be thankful.
I know that there's you guys have probably some image, and it's because, it's sort of such a legendary situation. He was our friend, he was our collaborator, but he absolutely was an extraordinary person. I mean, the legend is real, if that makes any sense.
Yes.